Hey, Rob.
Hey Dean, how you doing, man?
Good, thank you very much, sir. Okay, so tell folks a little bit about you, and then I want to drop you into some hypothetical situations, and you give me some answers based on your experience. So
Yeah,
tell folks
sounds
a little
good.
bit about you.
Yeah, Rob Strickland, 25 plus years experience in kind of go-to-market strategy, sales execution, worn
Hmm.
lots of different hats. I cut my teeth in advertising in Manhattan at Young and Rubicam.
Mm,
Got a degree and then wanted to get into technology, so I went to AT&T.
right.
And folks may not consider that a high-tech company, but had a great manager, coach, mentor,
Yep.
and then got into wireless and then got into software and high tech, and sold a company in '06 to IBM, which kind of gave me my second MBA. And
Hmm.
I think all that said, long story short, I have experience, I think, in Fortune 100 companies, and I try to bring some of that kind of know-how and thought process to smaller, mid-sized startups to help accelerate their growth.
Okay, then I've definitely got some good hypotheticals for you because there's been lots of like beginnings, and the podcast mainly focuses on beginnings, right? So, um, let's start this. Do you prefer? We can either talk about new employers or new clients. Which would make more sense for you?
And by that you mean people
Like
hiring
full-time
me?
CRO positions or
Gotcha.
fractional CRO?
It doesn't matter to me. My approach is
Sure.
relatively similar.
So then
Yeah.
let's imagine you've signed and you starting at a brand new company, employer or fractional client, whichever, right? And today's day one, and you're actually going to be on site and you walk in, right? And on Monday morning, and like, what is the nightmare scenario for walking in as a newly hired like CRO? And what's kind of the dream scenario?
Yeah. I mean, hopefully, this is kind of going to be a running theme of my dialogue, which is, preparation, right?
Yeah.
So when I sign a contract, I'm doing diligence on the company, just like I would do in a sales,
Yeah.
prospecting game plan, right? So if I'm doing the right things, I'm asking a lot about their strategy, about their culture, their people, the processes, how they execute, and then what their key challenges and pain points are. And knowing that from the different perspectives of the C-suite, and maybe I even I did do this, ask to, talk to some of the technical leads and engineers in
Yeah.
smaller companies. You get a sense for, what you're walking into and what you have. Um, and to the extent possible, I will actually codify that, document that into a statement of work or my contract. I actually did
Right.
that on a gig recently. So I try to mitigate that. I'm not big on surprises. Having said that, there's always a disconnect between
Yeah.
what, the client said is true or their issues are, and what your perception as an objective new person coming into the situation are. And I think the nightmare scenario is nothing is as it seemed. The culture's kind of in disarray.
Right.
People aren't connected. They're not rowing in the same direction. They're a lot of half-baked projects, targets, ideas. And so there's like lots of things, but nothing maybe fully baked.
Right.
And I think the ultimate nightmare is the emperor's, plural, wearing no clothes. So it depends who hired you, but like a CEO who's really not self-aware can be really challenging, because you're just going to be banging your head against the wall in terms of what you said before you came in, what they think they want, what you see as the truth, and your ability to execute. I mean, there's always a bit of that, but if it's stark, it can be really depressing. It can also be a huge opportunity for upside if you can convert them.
Right.
Conversely, the dream scenario is, I think everybody wants to make an impact as quickly as they can. So uh, coming in, everything is relatively as was described. I think of 80/20, 80% of it's directionally correct. And there's like three or four pockets around people, process, and technology
Hmm.
that if you can orchestrate and create, automation, seamlessness, connectivity, collaboration around, you can start to really create some quick wins, which gives you a lot of credibility to kind of create that 60, 90 longer term plan to, sustainable growth.
Well, okay, so let's jump forward. It's, not necessarily in every case, but let's jump forward like 90 days, and you're in a conversation with the CEO or someone else, and they said, like we saw the value prop coming in of bringing you in, but my real aha moment after having you here for 3 months is what?
Oh, I'm putting words in their mouths. Oh, about
Yeah,
me. Okay.
I'm putting
Yeah.
words in their
Yeah.
mouth.
Yeah. 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 I connective tissue. I mean, I'm still a believer, and I've got the silver hair to prove it, right? That people, um, coached properly, motivated properly,
Mm-hmm.
are what drive execution and strategy,
Right.
right? And, in this day and age where tools are changing every day, you know, part of your strategy has to be your ability to execute. So I really view myself as connective tissue. I've worn a lot of hats. I've, been a COO, a CIO. I mean, I was a CRO before I think the term was coined, because
Yeah.
I needed to put together things in the go-to-market plan, like, entity diagrams with a technology lead, or marketing collateral, or
Right.
actually put up a first website back in 2002. And so wearing all those hats, you live all those roles. And so, in the end, I think you get visibility into how to connect the dots to create kind of a flywheel of execution. And so it's connective tissue, and it's my ability, I think, to try and analyze, surface the problems, articulate kind of the first principles of why they matter, and then
Right.
how solving them are related to outcomes.
Right. Let's switch scenarios. And you're the key. Excuse me. Okay, so let's switch
Bless
scenarios. You're on stage. You're the keynote speaker. There's 250 people in the audience. Okay.
you.
Um, and they're all sort of like coming out of corporate. This is they're all about to either go into a company or go into the marketplace, and it's their first time being elevated to the CRO level, right? So they've been coming up, now they're here, right? And they all started yesterday, so you got way more experience at this than they do. And so as you give your speech, I'm going to give you like 3 sentences, and you just finish the sentences. Take as long as you need to like finish out the thought, okay? But in the beginning, you're talking to them and you're saying like, as a CRO starting out today, the thing you're probably going to be most surprised by is what?
The number of issues the organization is looking to you for answers, which
That's
I
very
love,
yeah,
right? And again, that, if you're promoted early, right? And I
right,
have a criteria for how I promote that I think is pretty logical. That can be the Peter principle, right? You can get over your skis very quickly,
yeah,
because you're just inundated with different, um, functional requirements that require different skills and breadth of understanding, right? So someone saying, hey, our technology doesn't work, well, what does that mean? How do I peel that onion back? Hey, the leads aren't getting to the AE, the
right,
qualified leads. Hey, our website's down all the time. Like, there's just a myriad of things you have to kind of document and then navigate. So the sheer breadth can be one of them. And then I think it goes the other thing, that I said earlier, which is things won't be as they appear. So your ability to expect that and then navigate that, and ultimately prioritize the most important things, will be super important. Um, but yeah, I think you'll be surprised at, and CRO means different things to different people depending upon
yep,
the size of the company, right? So, um, you know, the breadth of opportunity and the breadth of responsibility, and how it's going to tax every skill you have, but also gives you a huge opportunity to grow, right?
yeah.
If you lean into it.
All right, and you're still talking to the same audience, and the next thing the point you try to get across to them is like, what you're going to find is that many companies just don't understand what.
Yeah, I don't think they know how to move from A to B to C in
Mm,
a, I don't want to say necessarily linear, but in a three-step mode, or however many steps it takes from conception of something, which is like the CEO on the ivory tower, C-suite. Yeah,
right.
I expect this growth, connecting all those dots to the revenue increasing by 15% monthly, quarterly, whatever,
Hmm.
30%. Um, and so that goes back to the connective tissue. And so I think often I'll get, a more mature company saying, we have a problem with conversion, or we have a problem with messaging.
Right.
And they're hiring you because they don't know how to take that end game all the way back to what are the root causes, and how do we address it, and how do we get the execution we need. And what you find along the way is there are likely 5 to 10 other issues that are not only more important, but also may be indirectly or directly affecting the outcome that you were hired to fix.
Right.
And so the good news is they're hiring you to do that.
Yeah.
Um, the bad news is they may not understand uh, that the A, B, and C, and how it relates to people, process, technology. And from it's just an old axiom that I just happen to believe is at a high level is everything.
Right. You think when companies are, or when you're talking to prospective clients, prospective employers, depending on what kind of financial arrangement it's going to be, right? Um, do they tend to the prospects you're talking to, do they tend to overrate something about the CRO role, and do they tend to underrate something?
Um, I I yes.
Yeah.
Again, I think it depends on the company type and the maturity. So I took over my friend's company. It was a little bit lower tech audio, visual. He worked for Bose, etc.
Right.
And it was much more of a people process, but he knew that I could wear a lot of hats, and we implemented a new project delivery, package that was, important, and he had that on the radar. But what he wasn't understanding was, you got to lead by example, right? If you're going to get people to follow the lead, you've
Yeah.
got to you've got to show in the trenches. You got to model the behavior. So I I I think it works for me. Um, they they overrate the um, the idea that one or two fixes will give me the revenue I need,
Right.
right? And put in practice, um, I think about like how they think about if I put in a system and a process from some headline I wrote in Medium magazine. I have a little process of converting leads to this funnel, and I put in
Right.
Zoho and I put in Apollo. My revenue should go up 100%.
Right.
There's so much more needed around process and training and getting in the trenches to make that happen. So it they might overrate this concept of waving a wand and making investments in tools, but not the other, two legs of the stool, which is, the people in the process.
Right.
Um, and so, the flip side of that is they underrate that need. You know, you'll read someone's resume, they hire somebody, and they go, "Oh, they've done this." Well, that this means different things to different people. And so in general, I'm always amazed at how people interview. I'm not sure they understand how to peel back an onion and ask for very specific stories and use cases around solving problems or what have you, because that's what unveils the person's kind of IQ, business IQ and
Right.
EQ, and their ability to tackle different things. So, one size does not fit all. And so, I've got the people, I've got the technology. Okay, why isn't my revenue growing? Because you haven't connected the dots with process and messaging from top to bottom, back to the A to
Right.
B to C. So, yeah, I think they overrate a CRO has magical powers. to grow the business, and that they may not need to be as involved. And I like to start very much at the top and the bottom, and then weave a plan that connects all those dots, a playbook. And I think they underrate how the C-suite needs to lead by example, and reinforce messaging, and be in the trenches.
Right.
The way
Mhm.
that's kind of how I like to lead.
No, that's good.
Does that make sense?
Yep. What do you think sort of, or is there anything that sort of defines selling in 2025 compared to 5 or 10 years ago?
I think it's time to value.
Yeah.
And so that's a broad statement,
Hmm.
but we have never, and Moore's law is out the window. It's like Moore's squared law,
Yeah.
right? We are moving in this AI revolution in blockchain, and quite frankly, under new U.S. leadership, we are going to be moving faster than ever. And I think if you're not an agile organization, that knows how to pull all these levers, right, called go to market,
Hmm.
in unison, or in parallel, I should say, um, with alignment, you are not going to grow your revenues. And so you've got to be cognizant of vamping yourself. And I think iteratively focusing on, okay, is my message still relevant in this target market based upon these new AI models around agentics or something else? Can we get first mover advantage and leverage some of these tools to create true differentiation?
Right.
And more importantly, starting from the back, my target market, I mean, you might even change your target market. I've done that many times. And say, this is, that's the blue ocean. I think the book's behind me.
Hmm.
There's no one working over here, right, in this area. Let's go target that because we can own it. And our core competencies around technology development, delivery, and, we built some, let's say agentic software that has templated, and we can drop into different verticals. Seizing those opportunities requires you to constantly look at your business, have those conversations with your leaders, and then use the right tools and process to quickly hit the mark,
Right.
and and make hay, and then create a moat around that, right? So I just think your ability to harness insights quickly to create competitive advantage is available, but it is not easy, and it takes, I think, a certain culture of um, self-awareness, reflection,
Oh,
evaluation.
no, that's smart. Okay. Last question before we. Actually, there's two more questions left. The next one is: as you're talking to prospective clients or even employers, right? Or as if any CRO is talking to prospective clients or employers these days, what's a green flag and what's a red flag to keep an eye out for in that conversation?
Um, I think we covered employers, right? So let's talk about clients. If I'm calling on
Sure.
clients, I still think one of my peers brought this up
Hmm.
long ago, 15 years ago, right? What's the hardest thing? Qualified leads. Qualified
Right.
leads. And I still think people don't know how to qualify quickly, and I think it's pretty easy. Um, if you're talking to the right one, are you talking to the right person, right? Who's going to cut the check, or whose bonus is reliant on some level of transformation or some level of improvement based upon your solution, product,
Right.
what have you, right? So, um, do I have the right person? And so, what I'll ask is, so if we do this, how does your life change? If
Right.
we don't do this, what happens? And if this is, I think that's a super powerful question that I really like to use. If you do nothing, what happens?
Yeah.
Uh, if you get an nothing, that means nothing.
Yeah.
They're not a motivated buyer, right? Like, you want to find the people where like their butts on the line if they don't make a move here. And that's typically a mid-level or lower person. At the strategic level, I'm more of a champion challenger model guy. So
Hmm.
I'll talk to CEOs, CIOs, CTOs, CROs. I was in London for quite a bit, and said, Rocket Mortgage is the market leader. Here's the study from JD Power, and here's what they said their levers of success are. If we can implement those, would that be of value? And if we did it this way, I think you could catapult ahead of those guys. So if I don't hear customers responding to that kind of stuff, and again, I'm a little bit more enterprise oriented.
Right. Me too.
But if they're not responding to your messaging, at least in a way that says, I'm not sure what you mean, tell me more, that's a great indication of interest.
Yeah.
But if they're not responding in a way that says, oh my God, I hadn't thought about this. This is great. I need to, my favorite line, and you and I are pretty senior guys. We get this quite a bit. I want to get on a call with you and the CEO. I want to get on a call with you and the CMO and talk about this more, right? That means that you have studied your marketplace. You've created the messaging that's going to resonate, right? And I'm not talking just the high level tagline. I'm talking the nuts and bolts behind that. That once you have are easy to articulate with your teams, your demand gen teams, and your AEs, etc. Then you can evoke, a qualified response that says these guys are in the hunt, right? Because I think from the pure sales CRO perspective, what we see over and over and over is the sandbagging or the bogus funnel, right? And so I'm just kind of a truth seeker, and let's just be straight with each other and talk about what's important in terms of our target customer and how we're going to convert them, and why our call to action is going to be heeded by them to do a deal. I mean, there's a bunch of stuff behind that, but to me, it's about true transformation is about changing their world at every level, low level, medium level, a tier of the organization, and say, this is going to make your life a lot better. It's going to help reduce this friction. It's going to increase this revenue. And here's how we prove it. So I for clients, it's all about, is my message resonating?
Right.
And that can be on me because don't have a great message, or I'd have the wrong person on the other side. So you have to test it both ways. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. No, that's great. Okay. So, thank you, by the way, for being here. This has been great. As we sort of wind down, who should be contacting you these days, and what's the best way to get to you?
Yeah. I mean, I started kind of doing fractional while I was working, just helping friends, companies. So I would say, my ideal gig at this point is probably, a couple million to $10 million company or higher, maybe a 20, that I call it pivot from a divot. They're just kind of stuck on a couple things, and they need a different perspective with someone who has some silver hair, who's been around the block, also has a little energy. I'm kind of a high energy guy. But I don't mind talking to startups at all. I love talking to them as long as they are self-aware. And I'm not a great bureaucrat, which is why I do this. And I gravitated ultimately away from those big companies I mentioned early on. So, but if they've got a SEAL team mentality, I'd love to help them anything go to market. And I can be found at Rob at Optivate, OPTIV, the number 8 USA.com. And that name came to me in the shower about 15 years ago, and it stands for Optimize Your Processes, Elevate Your Results.
Perfect. All right, Rob, thanks so much, man. This has been fantastic.
Dean, no, I appreciate it, man. I always get inspired by, your out of the box creative thinking, and you're a beast to be reckoned with.
There you go. You might be the first person to ever call me a beast, or to be reckoned with, for that matter. I appreciate it. All right, so thanks, Rob.
Awesome.
We appreciate it. And thanks, everyone, for watching, and we'll catch you next time. Bye.
Thanks a bunch.